Jonathan, it's good to see you. We've been talking now for 26 minutes and did not hit record. And this is going to be foreshadowing. At some point in the near future, you're going to have an episode where we'll share what we were just talking about, and it'll make sense there.
It'll make sense, yeah. Love it.
What are you up to, man?
Hanging out, man. Just trying to keep up in the AI business world. Things are crazy right now.
What's crazy about it?
Oh, yeah. What's crazy about it? There's so many things. One is the technology is moving so fast that people are having a hard time keeping up the speed of it. And that there's a lot of technology that is becoming enabled to where people can do things that they've never been able to do before. Case in point is Klarna replacing Salesforce and Monday with an internal system, doing it internally with a CRM. And they just released their financials a month ago, and their financials are like crazy good after doing some internal shifts, which is nuts. And like, for me, being in the tech world forever, like getting rid of Salesforce and Monday is ridiculous. It's crazy. Who does that? But yet that's what's happening. Then you and I were just talking about agents. Like this whole agent thing is like blowing my mind, from adding in this agent automation play to where a lot of things that would have required a lot of work from people is now literally being done automatically 24/7 all the time, which is shifting both what you're capable of doing and then what I and my brain am able to do. I'm wrapping my mind around both what that means for me on a day-to-day execution and then long-term consequences of like, where do I set myself up for in the future? Because it's like, it's shifting so fast. So does that help? Because that's literally on my brain all the time.
So let's talk about the Klarna thing first.
Let's do it.
I'm not aware of it. So
Klarna, just to make sure, Klarna.
Klarna.
K-L-A-R-N-A.
Klarna. Thank you.
Klarna.
What happened?
They, back in, I can't remember what date it is, so forgive me, but it's around August of last year, right before Salesforce announced Agentforce, they had this big to-do about getting rid of Monday.com and Salesforce.com for the CRM. And instead, they started building out their own, I don't know if they use Snowflake or something else, but basically they use their own database to build out their CRM before or after. At the same time, on play with this, they did a lot of AI for their customer-facing type requests. And so they eliminated some roles, automated a bunch of things, and they cut costs down like 30% or something. Fast forward a few months, they just released their financials, I think like a month ago from Q3, Q4, and their GTM efficiency is like crazy high. It's insane. So, and people were just thinking, I don't know if you can do this, and they're doing it. And to me, that's like foreshadowing. And I say this because in my own world, and I can't see what specific companies, but there's several companies who are larger, 4,000 to 5,000 people, who are running the same play of like figuring out how to unbolt from legacy systems like Salesforce and then using AI from the RAG automation things to Gen AI to automation plays from calls to different stuff, whatever the case is. And they're replacing old systems with new ways that are more efficient. Does that make sense? So like I heard Klarna and I hear these things, smatterings. I consult and advise people, like there's writing on the wall that things are shifting drastically from an infrastructure of businesses view from a tech point. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to break things down a little bit more though. So you talked about GTM efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
What is GTM?
Go to market efficiency.
Okay. There are a number of people who listen to the podcast who do not have a background in revenue. We get learning and development folks in here. We get other folks who will listen to it. So just that acronym. So go to market efficiency. When thinking about go to market, what are some of the things that you think about? Like what are the key puzzle pieces that exist when thinking about buckets, when thinking about go to market?
There's a lot of it. Main buckets are just like, where's your pipeline coming from? Where's your marketing? What's it sourcing? How effective is it being? What's your ICP? Which one's most profitable, successful, long-term from lifetime value? A lot of different things, like not only looking at each pieces, but the entire spectrum of saying who's the happiest, who's getting the most value, who resonates with us the most, all those conversations. And then looking at the front end saying, okay, is our marketing angle focusing on the people who are the most happy, most successful, most valuable, most true to what we can do as a company, whether it's services or tech or whatever. So that's one bucket. And two is just the efficiency inside of each piece of it. So like, I mean, I come from enablement. So my play was mostly in customer success teams or sales and making sure those two teams were as efficient and performing as high as possible. So looking at the stage, like the sales process, and seeing where in the buckets of each stage are things falling through, and how can I extract more revenue or more wins out of that, or through the customer success and saying, where are we churning, and how can I minimize that, and then up level the expansion plays.
Where do people typically see inefficiency?
Well, coming from the marketing brand, I think a lot of people waste a lot of money in marketing because they don't measure the right things. Like if anyone follows him, I'm a Chris Walker fan, and I kind of steer in line with him of like thinking that there's a lot of things that we measure that aren't the right things to measure, and that what is currently judged as successful marketing, I think, is ineffective long term. And it needs to be looking at from an entire machine point of view of saying, okay, what marketing MQLs, if you want to call it, they're actually driving the actual pipeline, instead of just saying, we made our MQL goal for the month. Like, who cares? Like, what's the pipeline and revenue, and what's the long-term consequences of this pipeline source? And a lot of times people don't have that. They don't have I work with a lot of startups, so they don't have that longevity to know that. But for a lot of classical teams, like there's questions that are not being asked. They're not looking at the entire spectrum of saying, this subset of customers is the most successful, longest lasting, most happiest. But that information doesn't get back to marketing so they can understand what the crap's going on, so they can double down on what actually works, which is amazing to me that doesn't happen. So for me, go-to-market efficiency is like looking at every piece of the pipe of making sure that we can extract as much as possible, that our angle from a company point of view is unique, and we can get to the market so we can become the market leader. And then once people get in, we land bigger, land more accurately, more focused on the people who we can make happy and good, and then expands later on down the road. So lifetime value is higher. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
It does. It actually, like that you use the word crap. Have we ever talked about revenue plumber?
No.
What's your first response for revenue plumber?
When I hear the term, comparing it to a plumber is just getting the crap out of the revenue. Yeah.
So when do you want a plumber?
Usually when you have plugs or issues or crap's coming out of the toilet, emergency. So
yeah, I failed at the setup here. So the first question should have been, hey, when do you need to have a plumber? When do you need to have a plumber?
When do I need it? Ideally before I have problems, obviously. Yeah. But when I absolutely have to need it is usually when there's a problem.
Yeah. So, and where I flipped it is this, and we joked around about this way back with Capozzi on, not even a joke. It's a real thing. So if you go to revenueplumber.com, you will hit the Catalyst sales site. So the whole piece
all these directs, by the way. I love all your directs to your place.
What happens is I do stupid things like anybody else. We all do weird things where a new idea comes up and I'm like, you know what? I should buy the URL for that, because who knows where that thing's going to happen. So revenueplumber.com is one of those things. The whole idea there is when you need to have a plumber is when shit's all over the place. You just have everything all over this. When would you have led to a giant mess? And if you think about revenue, and Chris Walker's been on the podcast a couple of different times. I'll add some links in there. When you think about revenue from a system and process and a chain perspective, it really starts to look like plumbing in your house. There's a main that kind of draws into the house. And if the main gets cut, you're fucked. Excuse me, but you are. If the main gets cut, you're fucked. If something though, when the water comes in and it starts to go to different parts of the house, if it ends up being held because some shit's in the way, then you're hurt in a given room. You'd like to build more capacity. But if you lose track of the data, you don't know where to build capacity, where to shrink capacity, where to cut certain things off. And this piece that you're talking about here, and why I'm going deep into this piece, is when you're talking about efficiency in the context of go-to-market, in the context of generating revenue, one of the biggest challenges, like you hit on, are where things get stuck and where things are leaking out. Right. And we all have things stuck and we all have things that leak out. And either one of those things, if it's in the wrong place, could absolutely kill your business. It could kill your business, because if you cut off the water supply into your house, like just give it a little bit of time and you're going to have some really angry people. So awesome stuff. So go to market efficiency. And I just turned on share. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can I share my screen? Can I show you
Please. Yeah.
Let's do the whole story. Yep. Okay. So in the end of November 25, so you see my screen, okay? See this guy?
Yeah.
Far enough?
Uh-huh.
This is November 25th, 2025. This talks about this right here. I'm going to show a couple things. Net income reached SEK 260 million in Q3 24. A 57% improvement as Klarna continues to compound growth and enhance efficiencies through AI innovation. That is insane.
How crazy is that?
That is insane. And again, one of them was it doesn't say in this article, but one of the things they did do obviously is this whole thing of like getting rid of Salesforce on Monday and redoing it with their own systems internally. And that's one of the things they've done, not the only, but one. So like they're cutting down their cost of technology and doing their own things internally, and then amplifying what they can do with AI that used to take a human. So all these things come into play. That's just like this, a 57% improvement is crazy. It's awesome, right? So anyways, these kind of sorts of things I look at all the time going, okay, there's something happening here. And because they're obviously publishing it, people are going to ask the same question, like, how the hell did you do that? Right? So yeah. That makes sense.
You used a word amplify what you could do with a human. Let's go into that a little bit further.
Yeah.
What do you mean by what do you mean by amplify?
I have this theory, and I wrote an article about it from another revenue magazine. I believe that the moat of the future is literally going to be humans and what one human can do with a massive fleet of AI agents. That's my opinion. Like for you, for example, we're just talking about this. You have all this stuff in your brain that if you could take Mike times 100, it's way different. Like, yeah, this concept's crazy. Like there's the, this is going to be worth thing. I'm going to quote the Bible for a second, but you know how the Lord talked about the profitable servant, how he gave him 1 talent, came back with 10, have another talent, came back with 5, and one had just had 1. Like, I feel like the same thing with AI, that like different people are going to be able to do different things. The AI is an amplifier. So like for you, Mike, when we get you to the point where we're doing what we're talking about before, like amplifying you, because because you have unique viewpoint, because of your IP and your talents and your experience and all this stuff, when we put you times AI, it's not you times 2, it's you times 10 or you times 50. So like that becomes a massive amplifier of your own value. And people who either have not fine-tuned their own unique value prop, mindset, IP, whatever you want to call it, or haven't honed down their skills of the things that humans can do and can only do, at least so far, they're going to get left behind to where a lot of the outputs they get, like I'll just talk from a prompting perspective as an example. When I have someone who prompts mediocre, they get mediocre results. When I can help someone prompt to the next level, the results are like light years better because 2 reasons. 1, because they know how to prompt, and 2, because they're experts in their field and they know what good looks like. And so they can get to that point faster. So for me, AI is that thing. It's like the thing I can take and amplify my own unique skill sets, my moat of me, and times it by 100, that nothing else has ever had that possibility before. Now, the consequences of this is going to be, you're going to have people who are doing tasks or jobs or roles inside of a company that's not moatable because it could be automated. But there's things and people inside of companies who are linchpins. I don't know if you've read the book Linchpin, which is an amazing book, that they're very unique in what they do. It's going to be really hard for an AI to do, like you. It'd be really hard for someone if like there's, I don't know how to say this, but like it's really hard for someone to, without knowing you, Mike, and all your brain matter, to mimic you. It'd be really difficult to do that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But you having AI is going to become the thing that's going to make you way stronger than anybody else because you have your own unique skill set and brain that AI can amplify.
Yeah.
Does that help?
This is one of the things that I'm most excited about when it comes to leveraging this type of emerging technology to enable humans to do better human things. And it gets back into this piece around the differentiator, the moat, the thing that will keep you separate are the capabilities of the human inside the chain and the way the human is operating inside the chain and leveraging all of the pieces of information that are available, leveraging the tools. I mean, what is it? Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough, I can move, and a pivot, a fulcrum, I can move the world, right? So with the right tool applied in the right scenario, you can do amazing things. That same tool applied in the wrong scenario is going to be useless. And this is where a lot of people get hung up on application of tools. They go to the tool first without building the skill set to be able to leverage the tool. And then they start to wonder, maybe the tool just doesn't work. And no, it's not that the tool doesn't work. See, you don't know how to use the tool. You don't know how to properly use the tool.
It kind of goes back to the guy, the mechanic who fixed the cruise ship. You heard this one, the story of the mechanic? So
So many
He,
different so many different versions of it.
so
Sure,
many different.
sure,
So
yeah.
there's like this massive cruise ship. It has all these different engines in it. One breaks down. They can't leave port. So the main guy of it's like most profitable cruise ship. The guy says, "Hey, we got to find a mechanic." Everyone comes in. No one can fix it. So I have one guy who can come in. He comes in, looks at it, finds his place, taps it, and starts working. He's like, "Good, that's good." Sends a bill for $10,000, and the guy's like, "What the hell? $10,000? You're here for 15 minutes." And then he sends back a thing, say, "I want an itemized list." He's like, tapping, uh, hammer cost of tapping, I think it was $2, knowing where to tap $9,998, you know? So like, that's the thing that makes you unique is like what you know how to do. And then I have this two sides of me. The one side is AI, yes, is a tool. But then the other side is AI is this massive shift in thinking and how you do things, you know? Because like for you, Mike, I know that a lot of things you do, and a lot of people do are these tasks and things that take brain matter and time and energy that aren't really productive. It's like the thing you have right behind it we're just talking about. There's all these things you have to do from writing newsletters, all logistical things. If you can imagine a world where instead of 30% of your time spent on original thought process and creativity and all this other stuff, that 90% of your time is doing that, that's a way different world versus where we are now. You know, like I'm excited about that world where we can be more creative and play more. And then we set up the systems and tools to execute and do all the piddly do stuff. That's a cool world I want to be a part of. You know,
It's a super cool world. How
yeah.
do how how do we bridge the gap between those who are willing to test and break things and those who are skeptical?
Yeah, it's like anything because this what we're going through now. I don't know if you know the quote. There's a quote back from 1910 or something in the patent office. The guy said everything that has been created has been created, so we should shut down the patent office. Back in 1910.
That's awesome.
I feel like that there's this constant change. It's like it's a very human thing of thinking that we're safe, we're good. I don't need to change. Blockbuster had this. Any major disruption industry has had this. And I keep thinking about this for me personally of thinking, am I willing to let go of what I've done before to get to another level? And I ask that question literally every day because like every time I think I've mastered AI, I'm like, nope, something else to learn. There's a whole new world out there I've got to figure out, you know, and I like that. But like so many times it's people get stuck in where they need to be, or I should say where they think they should be, and not willing to open up. So I think that's number one is, are you willing to do something differently? And then two is definitely this trial and error, being willing to make mistakes and to create. Like, I know this is kind of off the mark, but I think it's attached. I have a buddy who's like this masterful graphic designer who works with Adobe and does all these UX type things. And he was saying that when they create different products from a UX perspective, they're told to create 100 of them, knowing that 99 are going to be shit. Like they know that going into it. It's like, you're not going to get to your one until you get the 99 out of the way. And I think from us, at least for me anyways, I have this perfectionistic thing of thinking the first time I make it's going to be perfect. And I never get to the thing because I'm always expecting the first time to be perfect and it's not, you know? So it's like, you have to have this iterative, you have to have permission to be iterative. And then two, being patient enough to find the right thing, because even like with AI and prompting, I have to critique, and prompt engineering is about iterating. And you have to give yourself the chance to think differently and then be able to iterate and be okay with failure, because the failures are driving you to what's going to be kick ass. Does that make sense? So like to me, there's nothing new about that. It's the same thing that humans have needed always. It's just that times 100 with AI, because you have to do it so much faster, you know? Does that make sense? Hopefully.
It does. Are you familiar with Barry Diller?
Yeah.
So Barry Diller, he was on, I think he was on Reid Hoffman's podcast, Masters of Scale, way back when. And
Cool.
that was the first time I was introduced to him. And he shared the concept of infinite learning, which is kind of tied into the whole idea of continuous learning. It was more around being able to go into every situation. And this is one of those things I have worked on practicing it over and over and over again over years, even before coming across Diller stuff. But it started to, it put it together in a way that was much simpler than I would describe it. But it's basically taking a beginner's mind approach to every scenario you walk into. So as much as when I engage with a client, as an example, they want me to come in and give them the answers. They're like, how the fuck am I going to give you the answers if I don't even really understand the problem from your perspective, right? So,
Right.
and if I make assumptions, around what the problem is or why something is happening, then it creates bias, which
Yeah.
starts to create blind spots, which start to create a situation where risk is created inside that environment. And it's this view a lot of people will talk about: beginner's mind, infinite learning, continuous learning, test and iterate, all of those things. I'll talk about it, but they struggle with putting it into practice.
Yeah.
Bezos does this in his shareholder letters, and Steve Anderson was on the podcast a number of years back. He wrote a book called The Bezos Letters. And one of the concepts that's in there is it's always day one. It's always day one. Now, some people will look at it, it's always day zero, whatever it is. Every day is day one. Every day is day zero. There's always an opportunity to create and build something new from this point forward. It doesn't mean that you've lost all of that knowledge that you have from the past and how you can apply it in there. So I think it's super powerful when you start thinking about tools like this as a thought partner who can do certain actions over and over and over again at scale and increase the speed at which we test and learn things.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's what comes to mind
Yeah.
when you just shared what you were sharing before.
No, I'm with you. It's like your whole question of like, what does someone do about this? Like first it's go, to me, it's playtime. Like
Yeah.
anytime anyone asks me to go work in AI, I'm like, it's playtime for me. So like, I enjoy it. I'm kind of I'm a nerd, so maybe that's why, but like, it's fun. It's fun to figure out. I wonder if I can make AI do this. Like, it's fun to do that. And sometimes I figure out you can't do that, but it's fun to figure it out, you know? So I've really, I guess my attitude or approach to it has been like pushing myself to learn. And there's still things now I'm learning, like with agents. Like I've been prompting and deep in AI for 5 years and deep in prompting for 2 and working with actual AI products, but agents is this different world. And like when you have, I know we're getting really technical, but like just give the example, when ChatGPT came out with O1, that model, you prompt differently. But I had to figure that out, you know, because no one knew this. It's like, not like OpenAI comes in with a new model and says, here's the owner's guide. It doesn't do that. Like, we got to figure this shit out. And same with agents, like there's just a different way to prompt, to use, to think, to work. And it's been this last 5 months that I'm still in this world of learning, but I'm getting to a point where the output's awesome. But it took me 3-4 months of figuring it out, like that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And it can get frustrating, but I think as long as you're ahead of time, you know that it's going to be that way. If you expect it, it's not as frustrating. Like I went to this is another side note, but it's attached. I went to an anger management class. I was going to be a counselor one time. And so we had to go through this training around anger management. And this guy was talking about how his theory was why people got road rage because they expect people to drive perfectly and all they notice is when they don't. So they get pissed. He's like, if you want to change that, expect everyone to drive shitty. And then you start to notice when they drive good. He's like, you need to apply that to everything. So it's kind of a negative. It sounds negative, but like I do that with everything. I expect the output to be crappy so that when it's good, I'm like, hey, that's better than I thought it was. Like it changes my shifting so that I know what I'm going for. Good is always the goal. Excellence is always the goal, but like how I get there, I'm not as frustrated to get to. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
It does.
Because I'm expecting crap, but if I get good, I'm like, that's faster than I thought it was. It's awesome. So, yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you reset your own expectations.
Totally.
What's an agent?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you 2 definitions because there's different ones, but I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing in the marketplace and then the actual true one. There's a lot of talk in the marketplace about agents. I believe there's a spectrum. So when someone hears that marketing wise, they could literally be talking about a regular ChatGPT chatbot. Some people are calling those agents. Now, to the true sense of the word, an agent is not a chatbot. An agent has this autonomy, has agency. It means it has the ability to actually make decisions or do something. Now, it's all prompt based, but like I said, you prompt it differently than like just a regular agent. So if I'll walk you through a scenario of some kind. If I can make a prompt that would give me competitive research on me versus somebody else or company versus company B. An agent workflow would do that same thing, but instead, to your point we were talking about before, it would have like this ability to self-reason or to understand and criticize itself, analyze the results, go back and do it again if it needed to after its own assessment of the results, and then come back to me with something. This is why O1 is like the very foundational view of an agent, because it has what's called a cursive learning, which just means it's analyzing its own output before it gives it to you to make sure it's as best as it can give you. That's a very basic form of agency. Now, the high level is going to be when agents have access to different softwares or technology to where you can prompt it and it will, instead of me saying, make me an onboarding plan for a sales rep, I can say, execute the onboarding plan. And it'll build out the plan, calendar it, give all the stuff it needs to. It has access to all of my information, ports it in there, schedules everything. Everything's done. So instead of me asking for a plan, it's executing on the entire plan. So that's what an agent can do, or I should say a fleet of agents can do versus just a chatbot. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Super awesome. So here's what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard, let's go Jerry Maguire for a little bit.
Sure.
All right. So for Jerry Maguire, what does Jerry Maguire do on behalf of Rod Tidwell? He acts as Rod Tidwell's agent in
Yes.
the conversations that he has with potential buyers, so to speak.
Buyers, sponsors, whatever.
So you're giving, just like Jonathan said, you're giving that agent agency to go through and do things and make some decisions. And it's not necessarily autonomy to just keep going and going and going. It's
Right.
the agency to go out and do things up to a specific point where it needs to come back and check back in. And just like some people have talked about leveraging AI tools as an intern in the business. Have you heard that before? Have you heard people talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's stupid.
You think, well, okay, hold on. Why do you, so,
Okay.
all right, I'm going to say as an intern, you'd only give an intern a certain amount of space to go through and
Right.
do something before you kind of pull
Right.
them out. You have some boundaries, and those boundaries over time start to expand.
Right.
You're thinking about how you work with these agents or the agency that you give an agent will start to shift and change the more that it learns. One of the things that I run into with some of the GPTs that I've got in ChatGPT to help with the workflow inside our business, super simple workflow, like creating podcast show notes or creating an initial rev of the Learn, Think, Act, is sometimes the GPT that I've created will take the transcript of what I put in and it'll say, it looks like you've added a transcript of a podcast. What would you like me to do with it? And I respond back, follow the original instructions. And then it goes through and does it what it's supposed to do, which starts to get into this kind of agent, how it's learning there. Why do you think the intern, I don't know if it's a metaphor or an analogy, why is the intern description shit?
You only give the intern certain things. It's a mindset issue for me. If you think about AI as an intern, that means you're limited on what you'll give it or trust it with or do with it. And to me,
That's cool.
it shows a immaturity in knowing, number one, what AI is capable of, and two, knowing how to work with it in a way to get a pro level, expert level output. Does that make sense? So at any time anyone tells me AI is an intern, I'm like, yeah, you're not thinking the right way. You're limiting yourself of what you can do. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm going to ask you to shift your perspective though.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So if we agreed earlier that there are people that are out there who are skeptical around using these tools and applying these tools into the marketplace, doesn't the limited mindset start to create more safety in the way that they feel about adopting a tool and starting to kind of play with it and get engaged with it? Does it make that first step a smaller step than the large leap?
I understand what you're saying. I don't agree.
Well, it's good.
I don't agree. I get what you're saying. Like, it's the whole psychological safety thing. I totally get it. But yeah, I just don't agree.
Okay.
I'll just say that.
Look at that. See, we agreed. We agreed to not agree. I don't know that we disagree, but
let's just say it like this. If you're a CEO of a company and you have 8 VPs, they have extent of what they can or cannot do. When you ask them to go do something and they come back, are they an intern? No, they're a freaking VP.
Yeah, this is
so like, what's the difference between that and then saying there isn't? It's nothing the same. The only difference is what the output they're trying to give you as a VP versus an intern.
I think this is again, awesome.
I think this is
an awesome debate.
Yeah, that's how I think about AI, especially when you get into the agent thing. Like, it's that times 10, because you're saying, if I can train, quote unquote, and give access to different things to an AI, Can it do for me a VP level thing? I don't know. I'm going to try it. Let's just push it and see if it can happen. But I'm willing to push it and see if it can, and be willing to make it work than someone who's saying, nope, we can't do that. It's only an intern, and get it right. I'd rather be right and making a VP AI versus being right and being an intern AI. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a cool way. It's a cool perspective. I think there's a comfort level that people will go through as they go through their kind of curve in figuring out what they're interested in.
You have to push your comfort level with this. Like
Yeah.
AI is going to force you to have this existential crisis, both personally and professionally, that if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're not going to make it very far, because it will, it's just going to push you there, because very soon people make technology that will do, like the thing I walked you through before about having I'm not going to get into details, but an SEO team.
Yeah.
Literally, I have teams who have pitched me doing that same thing for $10,000 a month, and I can do it all for $500.
It's
the same
awesome.
quality output. That's in try it. If I thought it was an intern, I'd have to go, nope, I have to get next. I have to go hire an agency for 10 grand a month. But if I say, what if AI could do this as good as an expert agency could for less than 1/10 of the cost? Bring it on. Let's try it. But I don't know that until I can try it and test it and get results and see if it's going to work. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love the what if perspective, like the what if, like where are we testing? Where are we playing? And I think the challenge that I run into in my household is Jen is more involved in the business. Sean's more involved in the business. And it's just one of those things where she could be like, why the fuck do you keep sharing this stuff? And I know I keep cursing and swearing. So now we've got to call this thing explicit, but whatever. So
whatever.
Here's the thing. So I get excited about something and I want to go out there and just test the fucking shit out of things and potentially break some things and learn all the way through.
Right.
On the disc scale of things, if we look at through disc, Sean and Jen, actually, I'll talk about Jen more than Sean, because I don't know that I think we're still kind of figuring that piece out. Again, Sean, if you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy it. So they like more of the stability side of things, that safety kind of, that S side of things.
Yes.
Like in the conversations that we've had, where would you put me in disc?
Definitely not there. You're definitely, I don't know disc inside and out like you do, but the experimenter, the creator, I don't know what it's called, the innovator, whatever that is.
There's D, which kind of is like direct, I more of influential, S stable, C calculating. So for me, and I might be off. I mean, it's been a while since I've gone through some of the disc stuff, but for me, I am high D. Like I'm D, off the charts D. I want to be I, because I think I's are kind of cool and it's cool to see them lead and bring some things around. Right. But the reality is I'm more C than I.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about a lot of letters. There's no K in there, even though we've got Coach K on here, but I'm high on the D side of things. And Jen will be more on the stable. So she'd like to have a checklist of things that she goes through, kind of be really focused on. We're focused on time, energy, and attention on doing these things and not going in and branching out into areas. So just like those VPs that you talked about, or the other people inside your organization, be comfortable with the idea of where people are going to be relative to their journey. And at the same time, don't limit preconceived notions around what the capabilities are, because you've not had a chance to experience it. One of the prompts that I did in, I forget what version of ChatGPT, but it was all around, do you need to have been a VP of sales in order to operate as a fractional VP of sales?
Right.
So it comes back and says, well, you don't need to, here are some things. Okay. So if I didn't have experience as a VP of sales, how would you put together a 30, 60, 90-day plan in order for me to go out and execute as a VP of sales? And the stuff that it gave back was actually really good. Like just broad strokes, it hits on all the key things that you'd want to put in place, the questions you want to start to ask, and all of these other things. Now, I know how to prompt it after that to start to get some more things out, which I did, and started to pull pieces. I then shared all of that publicly and said, I did this all in ChatGPT, and directionally it's relevant. It's pretty good. I know what to do when things start to break. Does the person who prompted it in ChatGPT and created the same thing and put it in front of you know how to do the same thing? Like, do they know how to operate the machine when it starts to break? And that's one of the dangers that I think is out here. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how we work through this wild, wild west, test and iterate and drive, where at the same time, not have people out there who are operating the tool with the lack of skill. And that's the mental jujitsu that goes on inside my head about all of these tools and resources. So one of the other things I'm kind of playing around with is how can I train the engine, train the in ChatGPT example, the LLM, how can I train it to look at me as the expert in certain things and continue to prompt it to know publicly that these are the things I want out there, and maybe turn it into an extension of my team that's out there pushing some things. But anyway, so that was a lot of stuff.
No, I love it.
What'd you like about it?
What'd you like about it? I am a personal opinion that, of course, this kind of goes back to training. Man, how do I say this?
Be candid.
People who are experts in their field, who know, again, what good looks like, will get the best results out of AI because they know what it looks like. The only downside is if they're not capable of prompting it or knowing that it can do that, that's when it gets a little dicey. Like there's two sides. You got to have AI knowledge enough to know of how far to push it versus the other side of the actual internal knowledge of like VP of sales. Like if you've ever been one, you know how to do this. Like, because technically speaking, an AE could prompt ChatGPT and say, tell me how to be VP of sales. And they could do that, right? But it's not going to be able to train someone. It could probably do a decent job, but still that process of learning and doing and experiencing that when they actually become a VP of sales, AI can't do that for you, but it can walk you through the process probably faster than you would have before, I would guess. Like if someone didn't know how to forecast, AI could tell you how to do that. Well, if you didn't know how to do a coaching meeting, it could help you how to do that, at least a mediocre one, better than nothing. But it's the people like yourself, like others. Like I teach a AI class at Brown University. And most of the students, just like 3 or 4 who are in their 20s, but most of them are 40s and 50s, 60s, people like that who are older in their career, and they're worried that they're behind. I'm like, you guys are fine. Like doing this AI knowledge mixed with whatever your specialty is like exactly where you want to be, because that's where the future of things are going to go, whether it's agents or anything else. So, that makes sense, hopefully?
Awesome.
Yeah.
What else? So we've gone through a couple of different things. We've talked
got a lot of fast.
We've talked a bit about kind of the disruption that's happening in SaaS as an example. Like where people spend a lot of money, especially in user-based licensing models, that they're looking back and they're saying, "Do I really need all of that?" Like, I could tell you, I think there are a number of members of sales teams that I'm fortunate enough to have an opportunity to work with, where I think they would actually perform better if we didn't have the CRM.
Yeah, I agree.
And the reason why do you say you agree?
Because I've seen it firsthand. Like it's a bear. Like probably because I'll be honest. Like I work with Momentum as an advisor. Okay. And like a lot of their value comes into automating the CRM data entry so the sales rep can actually freaking work. And all of their actual case studies of teams that have not, like the quality stuff they're getting and the teams able to do what they need to do outside of it, like they're freeing up 20-30% of the time to go sell more. Teams love it. So like it goes back to the Klarna thing of like you could automate conversational data and everything you need to know about forecasting from the actual conversations, emails, whatever, into some sort of database that can then be prompted to be asked by any VP of sales at any time. What then could a sales rep do? Like a lot freaking more they're doing now,
And imagine if they were able to get that data into the system. They were able to input the data in the system, however they input the data in the system.
Yeah, whatever.
Captured through whatever means. Whatever means are available. And you can think of all of the different ways that information is capturable, right? So they're able to get the data in the system. And this unstructured data is able to be put into a system in a way that's meaningful. And then you're actually, in addition to getting data, you're actually able to deliver insight and perspective to the person on the other end. So now the human who's involved in the chain can look at a dashboard and say, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit behind on pipeline created versus what I would have done historically at this time period in over the history of the work that I've done. What's changed? Is it what I'm doing? My inputs? Is it the market? Is it the way that the market's responding to certain things? But now they get to apply their brain to with information and insight that can help them think a little bit differently about the way that they do their work, and then go out there and get the comfortable testing more things. And then on the other side, when you think about the shit implementations that typically happen with CRMs, typically the reason a shit implementation happens is because some ops person goes in and said, or a consultant who's been educated by the CRM company about how you do things, goes in there and says, this is the cookie cutter version. It's going to feel personal because it has a couple of headers that look like your stuff, but this is how you do this and implement it.
Right.
Now go out and run with it. They don't actually know how it works in the field. They don't know what the experience is that the rep has, what the workflow looks like. They've not taken the time to go through and do it.
Right.
So now when you start to get into this whole idea of, well, what Klarna has done, and I was not familiar with that at all. So I'm going to go a bit deeper and ask you a couple of other things around it.
Yeah.
So you look at this and you start to say, okay, well, now this creates an opportunity for us to think different and do different as it relates to many of the tools that we've gone out there and purchased from a user license perspective, or the other one, which is consumption-based. So you start to get into these consumption-based models. Well, some risk out there, and this is where the consumption-based model starts to become really interesting depending on what type of data you're looking at. You'd mentioned, I think you mentioned it while we were talking here, Zapier as an example, but you've got all of these different requests or things that are happening inside there. So that starts to change the way that the money is organized inside the organization. I think it is really cool to be in this space that we're in right now, to be able to kind of think through this and do things differently with it, considering way back when part of the wizardry that I was known for was being able to do pivot tables, VLOOKUP, and concatenate in Excel. And you thought I was Gandalf.
Right.
So,
right.
Jonathan, I think this is all awesome.
Yeah, man. I love this conversation, but I think that, I'm going back to your audience for a second, like there's just a lot going on here. I think if anyone's listening to this, wherever they are on their journey, best thing I can tell people when I leave any time is like, how willing are you to think differently? How willing are you to think and do differently before? I'll give you an example. I was just talking to a sales team who are right in the middle of scaling, and they're talking about, we got to hire. And marketing team hire, those RevOps and enablement and all this other stuff. And I was like, what if there's another way to do this? Are you willing to do things differently than your playbook? Because the VP of sales was, well, in the past I've done this, this, and this. I'm like, we're not in the past anymore. We have options for other things. Are you willing to do things differently? And that's the play. Cause like for you and me, I've been to, I don't know how many startups where same play, scale up like crazy, hire like crazy. 2 years later, they lay a bunch of people off because they, whatever reason, right? I'm thinking, let's think about this differently. I'm not saying that we're going to commit doing everything AI. I'm just saying, are you willing to at least give the option of something different? And to your point, I think it's really about testing it and always having this feedback loop to make sure that the results are getting you what you want. Because if it's not getting you want, then don't use the damn thing, you know? And the second thing I'm going to add is every time someone has me talking about AI, the first question they ask me is, what tool should I get? And I always tell them the same thing, which is that is the wrong first question to ask me. Okay. The real question is, what are the goals you have? What's the problems you have? What's the gap you have? Where's like in the plumber piping system? Where's the inefficiencies? And then what's the highest priority to get you the goals you want to get to? And then let's talk about AI, because then we have the context of what's actually going to make business impact. Because otherwise, if you just get AI, we're going to be in the exact same problem we have now with most SaaS, which is a lot of fluff and no results, you know? So what I love about AI is it's forcing people, even with outcome-based pricing, it's forcing people to think about, what are we actually paying for? What's the results we're actually getting out of this? And whether it's seat-based or not, it's really asking the question and forcing us the question of what's the value and how do we measure this? And how do we know what's happening? And all this other stuff. I like that a lot. I like that direction.
I'm a big fan of that outcome-based, which is different than the consumption-based, which is different than the user-based, like all of that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to see the evolution. Where can people follow you, pay attention to what you're doing? Where do you want people to go?
It's LinkedIn, best place. I post all sorts of smattering stuff. There's a free newsletter, there's a podcast, there's a bunch of other stuff, but LinkedIn is like my central place where everything gets posted. So this place.
And I have not gotten to the point where I start calling you Coach K. So
Okay.
I know
I'm
most,
looking at it.
I know most other around there. So if you want to get in there
Right.
with Coach K, you want to get in there with Coach, follow him on LinkedIn, follow Jonathan on LinkedIn. I will include links in the show notes. If you've got questions around this stuff and you're starting to kind of explore where you want to go and what you want to do, Jonathan is a great resource that's out there. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And to tease, I'm looking forward to when we can hop back on and explain what we're doing with your agent team of Mike times 100 and show some fun stuff. I'm excited. I'm going to tease that because I'm really excited about that.
There we go. If you know somebody who would enjoy this podcast, please share it with them. The shares help us let Jonathan and I both know via LinkedIn. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about yours?